Hi,
Yeah,
everyone. So we have Luke from Fio Protocol as our next speaker. He has a lot to share about his journey with Fio Protocol and what Fio Protocol is doing in general. And he also has some advice for the hackers who are building during the Unblock 2021 hackathon. Over to you, Luke.
excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And please let me know if you can't see it. Just one second here, once I get it shared. And there
Yeah,
we go.
it works.
Excellent, thank you. So again, my name is Luke Stokes. I'm the Managing Director for the Foundation for Interoperability. And our basic goal is to try and make crypto products easier so anyone can use them. I've been in the crypto space for quite a bit now, actually. This is a slide I gave a talk in 2013. So way back in 2013 in January, I was talking about how crypto, particularly Bitcoin, was going to be more disruptive than the entire internet. It's quite a bold claim in 2013, but I still believe it today, actually. I ran an e-commerce company called FoxyCart, and there's actually still a FoxyCart on the Bitcoin wiki. There's still a FoxyCart entry because back here, like it says in 2013, I was blogging and speaking about trying to get people to add the ability to accept cryptocurrency to their shopping cart, because FoxyCart was an e-commerce shopping cart company. And we had thousands of stores, but something I learned through that process, it was nobody really cared in 2013. It was, even though I'm looking at this going, this is going to be the most disruptive thing in my lifetime. It's going to be amazing. Very few people were persuaded to accept cryptocurrency. It was too confusing. It created checkout friction as people were trying to understand what it was increased cart abandonment. And ultimately it was just too frustrating. And from there, I got a little discouraged, but I ended up getting involved in other projects like the Steam blockchain. I was very excited that it had human readable addresses and you could earn cryptocurrency just by blogging. I also was involved in the EOS launch with the EOS block producer, EOS DAC, community owned block producer. So I was looking for ways that we can make cryptocurrency easier for people to use. And this is when I stumbled upon some of these challenges that the Dapix company that built the first version of the Fio protocol came about with their usability report. Almost like 3/4 of the people sending and receiving tokens and coins had trouble with it. They were not fully confident in the process. It wasn't a fun experience. Almost 20% actually lost funds or had a failed transaction due to managing their public addresses. 6% were actually victims of man-in-the-middle attacks. And that's where you send someone a cryptocurrency address, and there's an attacker that gets in between that communication and is able to swap out your address with their address. So then you send the cryptocurrency thinking it's going to the right person, and it actually goes to an attacker, which is terrible. And then more than half of the people, they had some type of problem interacting. And this is just the reality of the cryptocurrency space today. And when I think about this, saying, okay, well, that's where we are today, but where are we going in the future? And this slide deck I put together last night kind of merges a couple different decks. One is like an internal deck. So I'll be talking more about the cryptocurrency mass adoption in the future and the reasons for it. But ultimately, I think it's inevitable. It's the best ledger ever invented. And money has always been a ledger, whether it's tally sticks, rocks, shells. It's always been a mechanism for keeping track of credits and debits. And I really do believe this is the best ledger ever created. But it is too difficult to use today for mass adoption. I know in India, they have UPI and they have other systems that are much easier to use than these centralized approaches. Also, it's possible that when we do reach mass adoption, it's not going to be probably just one coin. I know the Bitcoin maximalists would tell you it's only ever going to be Bitcoin, but we already have Ethereum and we have other interesting networks that demonstrate there's a lot of interest in other solutions that blockchain technology can solve, such as smart contracts, supply chain management, DeFi, all these things, of course. So there's probably going to be hundreds, maybe not the thousands that we have today, but probably quite a few. So in that case, I do believe it's inevitable that we're going to have an interoperable usability solution between all of these different tokens and coins. And the question for our industry is it going to be a centralized solution that makes this stuff easier? Or is it going to be decentralized, private, secure, and self-sovereign? Which of course, that's what I'm working on with the Fio protocol. Again, a little more of my backstory. I've been involved, like I said, since January 2013. My first purchase of Bitcoin, I spent $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. And I've been pretty excited about it ever since. And in 2018, I sold my business to focus full-time on consulting and advising in the space. And I've been working to solve this problem because I think it really is important that we make crypto easier to use. And here's an example of a comparison that we can make that I think is important. The internet was around for more than 10 years without a lot of adoption. But as soon as the hypertext transfer protocol came out, and you could think of that as a usability layer for the internet, we saw a massive explosion in adoption. And this is important because everything that we think about in terms of the internet today, the World Wide Web, web browsers, the touch point where the human person connects with the low level protocol technology, that experience was extremely important for people to actually understand what the internet is and how to use it. And I think we're in a similar space with Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrency in general, because we've been around for more than 10 years. It's still really confusing, got these long, crazy addresses that are hard to understand, key management problems, all of these things. But as soon as we have this usability layer to make it easier and work across all the different blockchains, you don't really care if you're using TCP/IP or WebSockets, or it doesn't matter the protocol underneath the hood if you're going to have a great experience using the internet. So here's the start of an internal slide deck I made last week that I've shared with a couple of people, and they've really got excited about it. So I figured I'd add it to this discussion as well. And it really talks about why I believe mass adoption is coming and why I believe you're probably not ready for it. There's a concept called the law of diffusion of innovations. And it's basically this theory that explains, how and why and what are the rates of new ideas and technology spread. And it breaks things down into innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. And it relates to exponential growth as well. So kind of give this a view, if you were to look at the Wikipedia page, it describes we're way over here in terms of cryptocurrency and blockchain. It's these early innovators. They can put up with all kinds of crazy technical hurdles. These are the type of people that would be fine in the internet days, hand typing an IP address, for example. But where we're going, and very, very quickly, is a much, much larger segment, the early adopters and early majority, that expect a much different, much improved user experience. And the idea with exponential growth, these are some quotes from my good friend Sean King, who lives here in Puerto Rico with me as well. And he talks about exponential growth. We hit this tipping point, the third doubling from 1%. Exponential growth patterns in technology and biology, they don't stop on their own unless something major happens. They continue until you reach full saturation. And the exponential process, once it reaches that 1% penetration and adoption, you're only 7 potential doublings away from 100%. And once it achieves 8%, which is the tipping point, you're only 4 doublings away. And the odds of saturation are all but certain. And when people think about these doublings, if you actually have exponential growth, these things happen so much quicker than most people can actually comprehend or realize. And there's reasons for that. And we'll get into that in a second. But I do want to highlight, this is the great article here, and I could make my slides available if you want. But this comparing the internet with Bitcoin as far as adoption. And I think that this is a lot of the slides that I'm going to show next came from this article. And I think it's a great article for explaining what we're experiencing. And so when you look at the internet, and I started building my first websites in 1996. And so I was around when a lot of this was starting on the internet. Very, very small adoption numbers on a global scale. But very, very quickly, you reach hundreds of millions of users with the internet. And what's fascinating to me is how, and this is a kind of a different angle talking about the price, but even the price, as well as the kind of creation of new wallet addresses and other different metrics that they track, is very, very close to this rate of adoption of the internet. If you compare these different years, 2003, 2004, compare these, 2020, 2019. And so when I pull from this article, there's this quote that I thought was important. It says, as far as adoption is concerned, Bitcoin had approximately the same number of users as the internet in 1997. However, Bitcoin's mass adoption is growing at a faster rate when compared to the internet. It's projected that the next 4 years, Bitcoin will have around 1 billion users. And again, this is from this article I referenced. And that it's just hard for people to even comprehend that you could get to 1 billion users in just 2 to 3, 4 years from where we're at today. And so when I think about this, and in this presentation, I'm trying to plant a seed for those who are builders in the ecosystem today. So I know a lot of you are involved in the hackathon and thinking through about what should you focus on? What should you build? How should you think about where the industry is going and where the world is going related to blockchain and cryptocurrency? And so if you're being consistently logical about just the math, the pure numbers, to reach the greatest number of users, to build something cool in your hackathon that will impact the most people, you want to focus on the right group. And that means the right group of people mathematically are people who are not involved in cryptocurrency at all today. It's people that expect a great user experience, or people that are coming into this ecosystem if we continue to follow the doublings that we've followed up to this point. And so this is another graph from that article I thought was very interesting. And it essentially shows the curve of adoption, how quickly it's reaching 1 billion users. And you can see here, the internet with its incredible explosion, how quickly it came on the scene. It took about 7.5 years to reach roughly where we're at now into 1 billion users. And if you follow the similar curve that we're on with Bitcoin, if it continues the same trajectory, we're going to reach that in a much shorter time of just 4 years. And that's really interesting, really significant. So again, when I'm sharing these numbers and I'm talking about just around the corner, it's even difficult for me to accept because I've been in this space for more than 8 years and I was wrong. Early on, I was like, man, this is so amazing. It's going to be, well, I wouldn't say I was wrong. I was just maybe a little bit off in my timing expectations. I was pushing really hard to get everyone excited about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, to add it to their e-commerce stores, to accept it as payment, to use it as currency. And I was just too early. At the time, I didn't understand these kind of mathematical patterns that have displayed themselves again and again and again with network-based technology solutions. And so when I'm thinking about it now, going, okay, I have to double check myself. My expectations were wrong then. Why am I convinced I'm right now? And it doesn't feel right. And that's the thing that's like, is this real? And yes, it's real, but it it kind of feels wrong. How can I be sure of this? Is it actually growing exponentially? I have a friend of mine, for example, who's been following Bitcoin ever since the white paper. He really actually got the original, when it first came out, read about it. And he's been following the actual statistics of the doubling of Bitcoin and in terms of adoption. And it really has followed this for over 10 years, these doublings, this exponential growth. And if we follow these similar technological adoptions, again, the correct conclusion is to focus on those who don't have any cryptocurrency today, aren't in the blockchain today. That's where you're going to have the largest market segment for whatever it is you want to build. And again, it's like, well, it doesn't quite feel right. Shouldn't we be focusing on, products and services that are in the ecosystem today, wallets, exchanges, DeFi, and these things? And I think, again, if the math is correct, you're going to have companies that are not involved in crypto at all today, but are going to be bringing hundreds of millions of new users to the crypto space, and they're going to need solutions. They're going to need answers. They're going to say, well, how do we do this? How do we make our products and services crypto enabled? And this stuff just kind of sneaks up on us. I mentioned earlier, you're probably not ready for this. And my thesis on that is because human brains don't have a good structure for understanding exponential growth. We don't see it often in nature. Most of the things we see are linear. And so it just kind of sneaks up on us, and it does it again and again and again. And my hope is that this presentation will help people to start thinking in terms of exponential growth. If you're in a system like cryptocurrency and blockchain that's growing exponentially, then I think it's really important to understand how that works, to prepare appropriately for it, and to be kind of out in front of where things are going so that you can help the most number of people. So again, when we think about this, okay, if this is true, what do we do about it? The early innovators, again, about 2.5%, they put up with all kinds of technical challenges that really the early adopters they never will. They're people that have a much higher expectation of the usability and the experience. And so if we want to have the most impact in the cryptocurrency space, I believe we should focus on making cryptocurrency easier for the early adopters. You mentioned just recently how the discussion is going on now with the community as part of the hackathon and watching the different speakers is, the high gas fees on Ethereum and just like these difficulties of actually using cryptocurrency on a daily basis. These are the type of things that I think we have to solve. And we have to think through the whole user experience of using crypto. So one of the ways that I'm excited about doing this, and I want to share this with the community of people that are building stuff in the ecosystem, is to start thinking about working together as an industry, actually building bridges and partnerships with solution providers. And that includes different chains, different tokens, really thinking about interoperability as an important way to solve these usability problems and help a company or a service provider today that it has nothing to do with crypto and blockchain, but often they have research departments that are studying this, and they're wanting to get involved, I believe, but the experience is too difficult. The performance isn't there. They don't have the ability to handle the traffic that they would bring, and they're kind of watching for a better experience for their customers. They don't want to introduce something kind of like we did with FoxyCart in 2013 that ends up becoming too confusing for the customer and doesn't actually serve them well. And so in this next slide, I put this together, and this is kind of the genesis for this whole slide deck. Started thinking about all the different pieces that are required for a company or service provider, or yourselves, if you're building a cool thing at the hackathon that's going to be crypto enabled, to think through, what are all the pieces that I actually have to know about? And, if I'm going to help a company or a service provider say, hey, I want to get on the internet, I want to get on the blockchain, I want to get on cryptocurrency, how do I do that? You have to understand all these pieces. And it starts with the seed phrase. So that's your 24 word phrase. And from that, you're able to generate private keys for any number of different blockchains that support SLIP, I think it's SLIP 44. And so you have this private key per all the different public keys. And if you're using a hierarchical deterministic wallet, an HD wallet, then you're going to have actually new public keys for each transaction, which increases the complexity of what you have to worry about as a builder. And again, you can have different public keys for different blockchains. So there's going to be different formats and different approaches. And then you're going to have nodes for individual blockchains, so that you can actually query the blockchain and say, okay, is this information correct? Did this transfer happen? If I'm going to show this to the end user, how do I know it's accurate? You can either run those nodes yourself, or you can look to a service provider. And then on top of those nodes, you're going to have APIs. There's going to be APIs for pushing transactions to the blockchain. And there might be a separate set of APIs for what they call a query node, or a full history node, a transaction node. So you can go and look at the history of transactions and get details about them. On top of those APIs, of course, you have SDKs for interacting with, and in this case, I'm going to introduce Fio being a part of this solution, and the supported blockchains you want to work with. So if you want to work with Bitcoin or Ethereum or EOS, your software that you're building is going to have a software development kit that knows how to speak that language. And then on top of that, of course, you've got your user experience, your user interface. This is on the wallet or the app itself. And then, of course, you've got the actual experience of sending and receiving cryptocurrency, signing blockchain messages, like if you're running a DeFi platform or an NFT marketplace or anything where you're interacting with smart contracts, you're going to have to show an interface to the user about what they're about to sign and what they're about to send if they're going to send a cryptocurrency. And then our hope, and what I think is important, again, with this conversation about making crypto easier, is on the top of all of that, you can have these human readable addresses, a user at a domain with a really joyful experience. And ideally, when it comes down to the end user, this is all they see. Everything beneath this will be handled by the wallet, handled by the crypto-enabled application, handled by the service provider. And the user is only going to have to worry about this very top part. And so just to allow me to do a little quick introduction to Fio. Fio Protocol is human readable addresses. So for example, my crypto address is just Luke@Stokes. And you can also do decentralized payment requests. I can send a payment request to someone and say, hey, can you send me exactly this amount of Bitcoin? And I can put in their Fio data, a memo, a note about why I'm asking for this request. Because most payments in the world do start with a request for payment. You just don't have money show up randomly in your bank account. And this is a fully open source, decentralized blockchain based on EOS.IO technology. It's highly performant. And we would love for your community who are building really cool stuff to be thinking about user experience. And I think this will have a big impact on how the judges look at your product and say, did they really make it usable? Is it friendly? Is it prepared for the mass adoption that's coming? And the Fio Protocol can help with that. Our team would be happy to help you as you're building your products and services to think about how you can make it user-friendly. There are a whole lot of wallets, as you can see here, that have already integrated the Fio Protocol. The Edge wallet is a great example. Shapeshift, Infinito, Garda wallet, Konomi. We have and we just started. We're actually this month will be our 1-year anniversary. So we're a relatively new project in the space, and we have a lot of great integrations. We also have exchanges that have integrated the Fio protocol in the deposit and withdraw area. Missing from this slide is Whitebit, which just went live last week, or actually this week, with their full integration with Fio requests in the deposit and withdraw area. So I'm really excited to introduce Fio Protocol to all of you and to explain why I believe that cryptocurrency mass adoption is coming, and it's coming very quickly. It will catch a lot of us off guard. And I'm happy to answer any questions or thoughts. You can find me at Luke Stokes on Twitter, or Luke Stokes in Telegram, or Luke Stokes on the Hive blockchain, where I blog often. And this is my email address as well, luke@fioprotocol.io. Our website for Fio is fioprotocol.io, and we're also on Twitter at joinfio. I'm really looking forward to your questions as well. I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Hi, I don't know why I'm not right. Okay, never mind. So Luke, I'm getting a question. People today are still wary of investing in crypto. Is adoption a function of its perception? If so, how do we change that?
I missed just the part. They're investing, and is it adoption a part of that perception?
Yeah, is adoption a function of its perception?
Excellent. Yes, that's a great question. And I think that definitely when we talk about financial systems and just value in general, I do believe that it's shared storytelling, meaning it's the number of people that believe it's valuable that make it valuable. I call it layer 0 on the cryptocurrency, security model. Like you have layer 1 is your delegated proof of stake or proof of work, your consensus mechanism. But it's the number of humans that actually believe what you're doing is valuable that matters. You and I could fork Bitcoin, make our own Bitcoin and pretend it's valuable, but no one would care because it's just you and I, right? So I do think that perception matters. It's this belief in whether or not this thing is valuable. And this is why I think it's so important that, Michael Saylor has been communicating as strongly as he has been, that Elon Musk and Tesla has come out with their support. A lot of large, validators in terms of human public perception have more recently been excited about this. And that was a much different story than in 2013, where it was just kind of like everyone's making fun of it. This is this fake internet money. One of my favorite websites talks about the number of Bitcoin obituaries that come out, where a major news publication publishes Bitcoin's dead. It's like, yeah, it's died hundreds of times somehow and it's still alive. So I do think that perception is a function of adoption, but I also think that it's fascinating to me how no matter what, it follows these curves. And we've seen this again and again and again. So it's almost like, does the perception follow the curve, or does the curve follow the perception? I don't know, but it does seem to work,
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed you mentioned that, the people who are not involved in this space will try to get in this space. So basically if I try to imagine the world where we have 1 billion people using Bitcoin, then possibly the biggest of the biggest companies, not just Tesla, will be involved with Bitcoin in one way or the other. Probably like the big fours also will be involved with it. But the centralized system is working as efficiently as they would want to. Do you think the decentralized version of the systems would be more efficient than the centralized version of the future?
It's a challenge. Like the centralization versus decentralization, I think is a really important conversation. And it does live on a spectrum. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't like delegated proof of stake because it's too centralized. And other people say, well, I don't like proof of work because that's too centralized. You've got your, mining farms and everything else that are very centralized. So I think it's always on a spectrum to think about, what is sufficiently decentralized? What does that mean? Is there a single point of failure? Are there multiple points of failure? Thinking that through relates to kind of the performance and the user experience that we're willing to go through in order to get the benefit of that lack of third-party counter risk and other different benefits that we get from a blockchain, a Byzantine fault-tolerant blockchain system. So I think it's going to be this balance of not sacrificing what I call blockchain rights, self-sovereignty, the permissionless systems, the ability to fully control, my own store of value, all these things that are really important to individuals in this space, not sacrificing that while also focusing on improving the experience, because you're exactly right in that these large companies are coming. Again, I think it's pretty much inevitable, and their user base is not going to put up with what we're putting up with today. I mean, as far as the experience of, sending and receiving crypto, it's just not a fun experience. It's very difficult, very technically challenging.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, because I really don't understand the concept of private blockchains. I mean, they do exist, and a lot of companies are working on it, but they're private blockchains, and it does really defeat the purpose of blockchain.
It is, you know, for a long time, private blockchains, I was like, this is so stupid. This makes no sense to me. But then I later realized it does solve the coordination problem, meaning you have different departments, different, you know, vendors and companies that have to work together, and they want to have a very permissioned way to say, well, you didn't go change that entry. You know, I can provably know it's immutable. You didn't change it. But ultimately, I think a reason for that is a lot of the public blockchains just don't have the performance and user experience that they expect. Whereas if it's a private chain, it's more a private database, they can actually create a really great user experience. So I think it's kind of one of those things where there was private internet, there was AOL, there was, you know, CompuServe, there was kind of these walled gardens that people say, well, I have to create a great experience because it can't be out on the scary World Wide Web. But, you know, and then you get search engines and you get these web browsers that are easy to use. And then eventually, you know, people are like, well, that's silly. Of course, I'm going to put it out on the public internet. If Netflix was on a, you know, if these things were just private and not accessible by everyone on the internet, that would be really silly, right? So I think we're eventually going to get to a point where you have these companies that are exploring the technology with private blockchains. You know, as our technology evolves, the user experience evolves, we're going to have more people doing it in a public, open way.
Makes sense. Darnell is asking, are you willing to connect with Clever Wallet as an integrated partner?
We would love to talk to every single wallet, exchange, every crypto-enabled endpoint, anything that's going to be on the blockchain that has a user experience. We would absolutely love to talk to them. On our knowledge base, if you go to kb.fioprotocol.io, we actually have a section there about benefits for wallets and exchanges. We as the foundation have, as far as mainnet launch, the community that launched the blockchain set aside tokens for the foundation to help as bounties. So if you've got an idea, you want to build something and you're a wallet or an exchange and you're saying, hey, I'd love to do this, but I need some financial support to pull it off. You know, we do have Fio token bounties that we can offer. And we've broken down all the different pieces, you know, the estimated hours of developer time to do a Fio send. You know, how difficult is that? Well, it's very easy. You just do a lookup, you get the Fio address, Luke at Stokes, you figure out what the Bitcoin address is, and you're up and running. You know, Fio request takes a little more development time. Fio data takes a little time. Being able to register a Fio address, you know, there's all these pieces that are there. But we'd absolutely love to talk to them. You can join our Discord at fioprotocol/chat. We're also on Telegram as well, or just ping us on Twitter, and we'd be happy to have the conversation.
Awesome, that's great. I'll just take one last question. What impact will blockchain interoperability have on adoption and development in the blockchain space?
I think it's extremely important. You know, I've been in this space for a long time. And when we say interoperability, I think it's important to just have a distinction there. You know, I think it's really important on the lowest level for chains themselves to be interoperable. I got very excited. One of the core things that got me interested in the EOS technology that I was involved in was what Dan Larimer called IBC, inter-blockchain communication. Apparently that's now a protocol term, I think, on Cosmos, but it's just the idea that these blockchains need to be able to talk to each other. And you see this quite a bit with the number of tokens that are now being wrapped and provided on the Ethereum network because they want access to the Uniswap liquidity pools and things of that nature. You're going to see this quite a bit more, I think, in the future on the blockchain layer. So that's very, very important. But then on top of that is what I also think is important, and what we're involved with Fio Protocol is a layer above that, is the user experience layer of saying, well, I've got all these tokens and all these coins, and as the end user, I don't really care what's happening under the hood technology wise. I just want to make it usable. I want to be able to send and receive crypto, interact with DeFi platforms, whatever I want to do. And I want to be able to do that in a seamless user experience. So I think interoperability on the highest layer is extremely important as well, because I do think there's going to probably be more than just one cryptocurrency in the world. There's probably going to be a number that provide different benefits with different technological details on how they do that. So I think the ability for a user to say, you know, it's not complicated for me to use my credit or debit card. I can just come in and use it. And that's, you know, I think that's really important as far as the cryptocurrency space as well, as far as adoption goes.
Just give me a second. Yeah, sorry. Luke, just one last question, if you could just briefly answer it. What can we expect from Fio Protocol in the next few months or in 2021, your plans?
We have a full roadmap we'd love you to check out in our Confluence page. We have a Atlassian, Confluence, and Jira that's fully open and available to the community to check out. And there's a whole bunch of interesting things in there. We're evaluating a staking program. We're evaluating a wrap token system where you could wrap your domains and your addresses and have them available on as NFTs on the Ethereum network, as well as the Ethereum token. We're looking at a number of different projects and interesting things going on. We have a really incredible team that's working well. We've got a marketplace for domains that's being built. We've got a program for doing cryptocurrency subscriptions. We could actually have pay that's on a schedule. We get the Fio requests on a schedule. Many different things that are probably too much to go into here, but we'd love to interact with you more as a community, and definitely come by and say hello.
Definitely. Thank you so much for taking up the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.